Guys, welcome back to the channel. On this episode, we're going to try to take this sheet of 18 gauge material, this bead roller, which I motorized, and this firewall and train tunnel and try to turn it into something that's worthwhile. So we're going to start fabbing this thing up. Hopefully we can get it sealed off and looking good, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make a backbone that goes down through this. I got some 1" by 1/8" flat stock, and I want to put it on center between the motor and the basically where the U-joint would be, or the tail shaft would be on the transmission. Sort of get that all lined up so I have a good center reference point for the transmission. Get that sort of bent in there at the elevation that I want, and then we're going to use that as our starting point so we can put like clecos and all our other stuff and mount it up onto that and work from there. So I'm going to get some of the 1/8" material bent up now, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I'll show you what I got. I made this back spline here, and this is going to be about how tall the bottom panel will be, and then we're going to terminate it here on an angle. The sheet metal isn't going to follow the exact contour of the spline, but it gives me something to cleco to when I'm getting everything sort of mounted up. And then up here you can sort of see how our step down is. So this portion forward is, there's nothing going on up here. This is all going to be shrouded in. So this line here, we're going to come up from here, and that's where we're going to come up, and then we'll have the sheet metal tie into this upper bulkhead where basically all our cal drainage and stuff goes. So we'll cleco, put a flange here and get that in there, and we'll make like a step panel that goes out this way. And this guy here, we're gonna have a guy like this. So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna get this all aligned in here and just sort of just tack it to this little cross brace I made here with the center line of the engine. And then I made a center line mark back here. Need to get this sort of lined up back here, and we're gonna get this whole trans tunnel centered within the cab. Now, let me stand up here, but if you look at this, it looks like I shifted everything to the driver's side, because I did. I said this in previous episodes, but the tunnel here is actually shifted to the right a good bit. So we're gonna try to not get over there too much because we're just worried about our pedal position, but I do want it to be centered up in the cab as much as possible, just to keep everything sort of even clearance around the trans tunnel. So I'll get the welder out here, grind up some of this like bed liner material off, and just sort of tack this thing into place, and then we should be good. Okay, so sorry, we're not gonna have a whole lot of hyperlapses or anything like that because, well, frankly, it's tight in here and you can't see a whole lot. So I got this tacked in back here, got it tacked to that plate up top here. This will be easy to cut out later. What I'm gonna do next is I'm going to scribe a center line down this spine here, and then we're going to start taking measurements of what we want this upper top plate to be shaped like. It's probably going to be like a trapezoid shape up in here, and we're going to work on getting that cut out. So I'm going to, off camera, take some measurements. I'm going to try to intersect this downward slope here, cut off some of these boogered sections, catch this downward slope and try to ride that out. And then on this side here, we're actually going to probably come up, well, I gotta measure and find out. I'll let you know in a minute, but get some measurements and go from here. Okay, so what I did is I got this piece of cardboard up here, and we're gonna start looking at how this lines up. So this section here, I'm gonna have to get kind of creative. I'm either gonna have to graft this over, or I'm gonna have to do like a double step down, like maybe do like a 45 kicker here on this side and then a drop down. Whereas on this side, obviously because it's offset, I can come straight, more or less straight down, like an 80-degree break, and tie it into the floor somewhere down at this region. So it won't be perfectly symmetrical. The top plate will be, which will be great for the center console purpose, but the floor, the way it ties into the floor, won't be perfectly symmetrical. So I'm gonna have to break that up into, on this side, I'm gonna have to add additional segments in order to get us out where we belong. But that's okay. So I'm okay with that. Again, this is gonna have a center console in it, probably about yay high to put the shifter where it needs to go and all that fun stuff. So, you know, this dash is gonna come down like this. You're never going to see underneath carpet and insulation this step here, but I know it's here. I want to try to make it look as professional as possible. So I think what we're going to do next is we're going to get this into CAD, obviously a simple shape, add some flanges here for us to bend down, put some step flanges in the back here so that we can overlay our parts over top of it, onto it rather, and do the same in the front. So all 4 edges are going to have step flanges. That way when we go to fit all of our side panels on and our front panels on, we'll have a nice section to weld to and get clecos on while we're mounting everything up. So gonna go back, get in the CAD. I'm gonna lop off some material, load it up into there. Let's get it cut out and then we'll test fit the real piece. Okay, so I went to Harbor Freight and got some they're like electronic shears. Work awesome, never had a set before. So I cut out some 20 by 20. This is 18 gauge piece. Just gonna fire this baby up, cut it out quick, and then we'll sort of set it up in there and see how it looks. Bada bing, bada boom, and we're cut out. See how flimsy that 18 gauge is. And I went ahead and just cut this dry because I was just trying to do it quick, but that's gonna work. We're gonna bend along these lines here and flange this surface, flange the outside, put a nice step in here, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that cut. So let's get set up on the table or on the spline. Okay, so I went ahead and traced out some lines on here, and we're going to use this bead roller to basically put some flanges here. We're going to use a flange tool, a pneumatic flange tool to flange these parts down here and flange this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go in with our flange roller and roll about like an 1/8 inch step into this plate down into that panel. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, get the bead roller set up. But before I do, I want to show you what I did. I bought this about a week ago. It's a Woodward Fab bead roller. And when you get it, they're crank style. It just uses a handle. And so what I did was I went ahead and reinforced it using some plate, actually as a leftover one of these 1/2 inch plates for my fixturing table. Welded it on the back there, added some bracing, and then I created just a simple drive. It's just a sprocket and a number 25 ANC chain with a little like sprocket up here and a drill. Mounted it up, hose clamp holding it there, and that is good to go. That's what drives it. In order to control the speed, I ripped the switch out of the drill, wired a big extension onto it, and then I put it into a foot pedal. So this is a foot pedal from Harbor Freight. It's actually meant to be a momentary switch. Rip the momentary switch out of it and put the switch for the drill into it. So we're going to use this guy here to get the beads rolled into this thing, and hopefully we can do a good job without ruining that piece that we just cut. So I'm going to swap these out for some flange rollers, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that rolled nice and easy. I was able to get a nice 16th step on the sides here, and I put them in the right direction, which always helps. And then on this guy, since I'm not stepping this little section down here, I went ahead and just used this little flange tool from Harbor Freight. It's like 30 bucks, and just sort of worked my way across here, taking little bites out and flanging this down. So you can see it's got a nice little step there, there, and there. So we're gonna be good there. So when we take our panels and start to butt them up against this piece, we'll have something to run clecos through and get it sort of fixtured up and room for welding too. That's the most important thing here, giving it some bite. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna swap the dies out. I have a 16-inch die on there right now. I'm gonna swap those out, and I'm gonna go to an 1/8 inch die, and we're gonna try to do an inside panel recess here and step this down. It'll probably tweak this panel a little bit, but that'll be fine. We can sort of beat it back into place over a sandbag or something like that and get it sort of finished the way we need to get it. The drive overall is working pretty good. I don't have a tensioner on this guy, so you do get a little bit of chain slip and slack into it, but if every once in a while I'll skip, not a huge deal. Try to refine it, but it's obviously working for what we need now. So swap out the dies and let's try this out and see if we can do it without ruining this panel. Well, I learned some things. This panel might be scrapped. So quickly I learned that my bracing back here, even though it clears, prevents you from swinging all the way around. So I was actually had to pick it up and try to like double step the corners, which is not going to work. You can see here, you can see the start and stop. So that is not okay. The other thing I did is I screwed up when I was resetting the die and took a big old chunk out of this here. So this panel's probably scrap. I'm going to continue to practice on it a little bit just to see if I can get it sort of worked out so I know what I'm doing with this stuff. But I'll probably cut out another section, blast it out, and bead roll it again because it wasn't that hard to do this. And knowing what I know now, I'm going to make the panel probably about 2 inches shorter because that is about all that I can get through the machine. So yeah, live and learn. So gonna swap this out, and but for now I'm gonna be sort of do some dollying and stuff like that and see if I can get this sort of cleaned up and at least sit it in there to see how it looks. But we're gonna replace that. No point this early in the game screwing it up and leaving it. So try it again. Okay, so this is attempt number 2, and I don't have an English wheel. So the correct way to do this is you run it through an English wheel and you stretch the material up. You can see this is stretched up. I tried planishing a test piece with a hammer and a dolly and try to like stretch the material that way. It wasn't working. So what I did is I took a 1/2 inch round top die and a flat bottom die and basically turned my bead roller into kind of like a powered English wheel. And I just did a couple laps, you can see on the back here, and just kept stretching it and stretching it and tightening it and tightening it. And basically what it did is it thinned out this metal enough that it puts some stretch in it and there's a raise. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put in the 1/8 inch dies and I'm going to bead roll this, and then hopefully when this bead rolls it will flatten back out and it won't work too bad. Because if you look at the other one, I didn't point out in the previous clip, but not only were the corners a little boogered up, but it's got some snap to it, like in the it's like just a little warp. So I was like, well, how do I prevent that? I don't have a English wheel. This is the best I came up with. Let's see if it works. Okay, I would say that worked about 50%. I still had a little bit of pop here if I try to twist it, but not too bad. This corner, the radius is a little meh. This one's good, that one's good. So I'm gonna call that a successful panel. I'm gonna drop it in. I mean, remember this is getting covered up by like insulation and carpet, so you can't see any of this stuff, but overall pretty happy. So gonna get mounted up into the truck and we'll go from there. Okay, so I got it basically fastened up here to the spline on the back. Next part that we're gonna make, we're gonna cut out this section up here and connect it to the firewall. So we're gonna bridge this section here. But overall, pretty happy for my first panel. We'll see if it lasts, if I'm as happy with that as I go along, but we're getting there. Okay, so it's the next day, and I worked this up in CAD and just wanted to cut it out. So I cut out some cardboard, and you can see here how this is gonna go up. Now, one thing to note, this flange is kind of curved. So I made this sort of stepped here so that I can tie the corner in if I need to. And the other thing to notice is this is not perfectly symmetrical. So the main box is centered and symmetrical, but the angles up here are not. And the reason that is because the way that this turn makes basically how far this turn is from the center point. So you won't be able to see under here with the dash in, and you can't see both sides at the same time, but I just need to make sure that I get this sort of able to be closed off. So it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical, but you can't really get it perfectly symmetrical because the existing cab isn't perfectly symmetrical. So I'm going to go ahead, get some material onto the plasma, cut this part out, and then we'll try to do some more bead rolling and shaping. Okay, so we got the part all cut out and I got the lines traced on it. We're gonna try the like English wheeling effect where I try to stretch it using the bead roller here. Got everything traced. You'll notice on this one, it's opposite of the way the trans was done. So this is part of the section will actually be raised out. And the reason that is visually, you can't see the trans once it's carpeted and it's got the center console over it, but you can see the firewall. So I want the firewall to be recessed because all these sections out here are going to be recessed when I make them. So I want it to be consistent and look nice. So I'm gonna recess that section back there as well. So that means from inside the cab, it will be raised. So let's get started on this. I'll swap the dies out on the bead roller and we'll get to stretching. Okay, so I rolled it out and you can see we got a good raised section here that we're gonna press back out. I got a little bit of, there's like little dimples. I'm not sure if it was just stretching or what's going on, but it follows a pattern. So I'm not quite sure what those dimples are from. The dies where they're contacting are smooth, so there's no indents or anything. Maybe, I don't know. Let me see here. Is there a dent on my die? Yeah, so there's a couple little dings on the die, and those are actually leaving dents on my part, which is sweet. So did not notice that at the time, but we can probably sort of flatten these out. And this whole section here will be actually behind the cab, so it's going to be body work. It's going to have body filler. We can peen these in with a, like a pointing hammer or something like that, get them sort of flush back out and get this whole thing looking nice. But now swap out the die and let's put the step in it. So I found out where the dimples came from. There's threaded holes on the edge here, and they were coinciding with the dimples. And if you look, basically what happens is I had so much force that it dented the threads in slightly. So probably made this roller a piece of junk, but it is what it is. I can just make another one of these out of some steel bar stock or something. This is a simple part. Probably shouldn't have been using this. This is actually a shearing die. Has like a cutter that bolts to this, but now it's useless, so whatever. So it didn't turn out terrible. I got a little warble here on my top line. So I'm gonna see if I can take like a dolly and strike this edge sort of down just to form it so the glare is not so obvious. But really the panel is gonna be sitting in like this and you can't see it like at all. So I don't wanna get like super anal about it, but at the same time I wanna try to make it nice. So I might just see what I can do to make this a touch better in here. Maybe peen it out a little bit and then go from there. But this panel is getting close. Just need to put the bends in it, and then yeah, we can try to fit it up in the truck. Okay, so I drilled and put in some clecos down here, tied it to the flange, and I got the upper section here tied in. So all I need to do is sort of form this around here, and then we can start working on the next section. I think for the next section, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this extension off a little bit, and we're gonna shorten up this trans tunnel to about here and see how that looks. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way it's forming out. So that panel is a 6.5 out of 10. But from out here, it'll look pretty decent. So remember, all this stuff's gonna get body worked, have some high gloss filler and stuff in it. So we'll see. Okay, so I took like 15 minutes here and just whipped one out because I don't know, it would have bothered me if I left it like that. So this one came out much better. You can see the corners are nice, the lines are straight, I don't have to do any body work, everything's cool. So I did not stretch this one. The stretching method is not going to work. It seems like it leaves too many divots. I need to get a real English wheel if I want to do stuff like that, but this is going to work for now. So I'm going to bend it up, replace that one, and then we'll move on to the next panel. Okay, so I'm going to start working on this tail section back here. Designed up a piece this morning that sort of goes like this at a 45 and then has some filler plates that go diagonally here that we're going to bend up. So I got to cut that and cut that brace out. And this is sort of what the bend lines are going to look like. This is the top, this is the bottom flange, this is the part that's 45. This is kicked down, and then these tabs here, these are just something to weld to, so I'll bend these up and give a little room. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to fire up the plasma, take some of this scrap edge over here that we have left over, and cut out the plate and get it bent up. Okay, so I cut the little arch out here, and I'm working on the tail section. You can see how it sort of snaps down right now. There's just a little bit of spring back with all this stuff, but you can see it's just push it down and it'll tie in. So what we're gonna do is I need to keep working these angles on this flange and bring that down a little bit. This section here is supposed to come in straight here, so I need to put a little bit more down kick on this and a little bit more in kick on this part. And you just need to keep finessing it until I get this line and this bend line lined up, because this is supposed to be a flange part that the sheet that covers this and comes down and ties into the floor will have these flange tabs to weld to. We can spot weld and tie that all together. So I'm going to keep dabbling here off camera. There's nothing too crazy going on. I'm literally just taking the pieces with some sheet metal pliers and clecos and bend, tweak, bend, tweak, bend, tweak, and just working the metal together. And every once in a while, if I have like here, for instance, I have just a little bit of interference, just taking the dyno file, well, it's not really a dyno file, it's the Harbor Freight cheap dyno file. So taking that guy and cleaning up these edges, make sure we don't have any interference, and just keep working it in. So once this is done, I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so she's all in there. This is pretty good. I'm happy generally. I mean, it's gonna be weldable, so I can grind that down. This step here, the next flange piece is gonna ride over top of this lip, and we'll flush that out, and then I'll tie into the floor here. These little gaps here, not particularly concerned. Remember, everything inside of the truck is going to be dynamatted and carpeted. Jump up here. And then on this side, it's just tapped down and around and tied into the floor here. So overall, pretty happy. I'm happy with the look of it, how it's coming up. I think it's actually starting to look like a tunnel. So next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on this section that goes from here up to here. And we're gonna have basically a solid sheet that comes up, and then it's gonna be broke on a diagonal to tuck it down up until this point. So there'll be sort of a triangle shape here, and then an angle to bring it down and tie it to the floor, because this angle is kicked out a little bit, but it's not kicked out as much as what the upper taper is. So we're gonna basically create a nice little triangle shape that ties this line to this line, and then the other triangle will come down and tie to the floor. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna mock this up in cardboard first, then I'll transfer my measurements to CAD and cut out another piece, and then we'll start working on this guy. Okay, so I went ahead and cut this out on the plasma, just put a quick break in it. You can see how it's gonna mount up in here, right here, like so. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to drill the holes in for the clecos, get it fastened up, and then I'll do some adjustments here to this bend line and just get it sort of seated, and then we'll work these this bottom section in to tie into the floor. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, so actually I really like the way that looks. I got the panel in here, and we overlapped it on that existing flange, so it sits nice and flush. Got the bend line intersecting down here to the corner. I think I kind of like the general look of it, so it's coming together. what I did also, I added a step flange in here, pulling this out so that when I start tying it into this section here, we'll have a nice flat section from the outside, which you are going to see. It'll look a little bit more finished, and I can not use quite as much body filler when I'm doing all the finish work. So pretty happy with how it turned out. Right now we're gonna call this an episode. I know this is like half done. So this is gonna be Firewall part 1 of 2. And then the next time that we come back, we're gonna start working our way around here and working on cutting all the actual rest of the firewall out and patching this side in. So, well, this side and that side. So stay tuned. I'll keep you guys posted. Hopefully we can try to make some progress, and then the next week you guys should see another episode. So appreciate it. Until next time, like and subscribe. I always appreciate the comments. All you guys leave and ask questions makes this stuff worth it. So take care.